Hi guys, I'm Adam, and today I'll be going over the intuition behind perfect competition, marginal cost, and average cost. So let's first look at the short run condition. And notice that the red line is marginal cost curve and the green line is actually the average cost curve. And the marginal cost curve actually intersects the average cost curve at its minimum. So let's dive straight into this. So some of you might wonder, why is the average cost curve very high in the beginning? Okay, I will remind you that the average cost curve actually consists of two parts. One part is average variable cost, and another part is average fixed cost. And the average fixed cost is extremely high in the beginning. Why? Because the firm will incur a high fixed cost, like the capital and machinery that it initially purchased. So the average fixed cost is extremely high because you are not selling or producing much units, so the average fixed cost is high in the beginning, making the average cost curve extremely high in the beginning. But the marginal cost is pretty low over here. The reason behind that is the variable cost is pretty low when you're producing a first couple units, because increasing a bit of labor could actually help you increase the output by a lot. So it doesn't really cost much to produce the first couple units. So that's basically reasoning behind that. And why would the average cost curve go down? Is because the average cost curve basically take in account of every single point of the marginal cost curve. So the marginal cost curve will be gradually factored into consideration of the average cost curve. So in this case, marginal cost curves is lower than the average cost curve, which will actually drive down the average cost curve until these two curves intersect, which is a minimum of the average cost curve. It'll drag it down until it marginal cost becomes higher than average cost curve. So after this point, because in the short run you are not able to vary all factors of production, and usually we assume that the capital that the firm is able to employ is fixed. So the only factors of production that can be varied is labor. But increasing labor will not be as effective as it used to be if the number of machinery is fixed. So that means the marginal cost, the cost of producing one extra unit, will actually be higher. You probably need to hire more workers to be able to produce one extra unit. So the marginal cost will be higher after this point. And that will significantly affect average cost by dragging the average cost curve upwards, because the marginal cost curve will be factored into account when we are calculating average cost. So that's the reasoning behind the shape of marginal cost and average cost curve. And then we will look at this condition of price over here, price which is equal to marginal revenue. So notice that in this blue line, we have an intersect which determines the quantity of output the firm will produce. So it's actually the same here in perfect competition and also in monopoly, which is marginal cost equals marginal revenue. That's actually the profit maximization point for this firm in the short run. So in this case, you can see that if the firm is producing at the profit maximizing quantity, which is marginal, the point where marginal cost curve intersects the marginal revenue curve, then it can actually trace out its price. The price is not changing, it's $8. So it can trace down to the cost of producing that unit, trace down to this point, which gives us 6.5. So this whole orange rectangle, 426,000 US dollars, actually gives us the total profit of operating at this point. So notice that could only occur in the short run. Why? Because actually in the long run, there will be firms that will enter the market and will erode or eliminate this profit. So let's see what will happen. So as more suppliers enter this market, because this market has free entry and exit, meaning in the perfect competition, the firm can easily enter or leave the market, depending on how much existing profit that are earned by the firm operating the market. Because this firm is actually really profitable with a lot of abnormal profit, then other firms will enter the market and drive this price down. Depending how many firms there are, this black line over here will be dragged down by different amounts until it finally hits the equilibrium price, which is where marginal cost curve intersects average cost curve in perfect competition cases. But more importantly, it's actually where marginal revenue equals marginal cost also, which is tangent to the average cost curve in perfect competition. So notice here, because the average cost curve is actually having the same y-intercept as a price, meaning that there is no economic profit earned by the firm. So that's the long-run equilibrium. Also, it's possible if there are too many firms enter the market in the short run, the firms could actually be making losses. So this line could be further dragged downwards, which will be the firms making losses. So it's basically this triangle. This triangle over here will be the losses made by the firms. Will be this section. So this rectangle outlined here will be the losses made by a firm if it were producing at this particular price. Okay, so that's basically the intuition behind the diagram. So we want to go back to assumptions and give you guys more examples on assumptions. So we generally assume identical products, meaning that the products are basically the same from different suppliers. That's not true in the real world, but a close enough example will be like the grocery stores, the apple in a grocery store. So the apples in one grocery store will be basically the same as the apple in another grocery store, or any agricultural commodities you could think of. A free entry and exit will be that there's basically no licensing requirement, which is clearly not true in real world, but as the assumption goes, that the firm can easily entry and or leave depending on how they're feeling about the price and market. And there are large numbers of firms, which actually leads to them being a price taker, because there are large numbers of firms supplying identical products. Then actually the demand for consumers is perfectly elastic, because they can choose whichever buyers to buy. So any single increase in the price supplied by the suppliers will actually drive the consumer away. So they will actually literally get no consumers at all. So, and one important point identified here is negligible transaction costs. What does that mean? That it actually assumes there is no cost or minimum cost involved in buyers trying to find sellers, or sellers trying to find buyers. So that cost is minimized or assumed to have negligible impact on our whole model. So we can actually think about like a stock market exchange. So whenever you want to sell or buy a stock, you don't need to really worry about where to find a partner to trade the stock with. You can just go to the stock market exchange. Although there's very little transaction cost involved, but we usually just neglect the transaction costs involved in place. So that's basically the intuition behind the perfect competition and the perfectly competitive market structure and marginal cost and average cost and all the assumptions underlying this diagram. So hope you guys enjoy it, and please click subscribe if you enjoy my channel or any other videos. I will be posting more the upcoming weeks, and hope you guys enjoy. Thank you very much.